What if the weapons that wiped out entire civilizations weren't made by men? Genesis speaks of giants roaming the earth. Enoch speaks of forbidden knowledge given by fallen angels. And deep beneath our feet, something still waits. Long before the pyramids rose from the sand, before Babylon, before Rome, something walked this earth that Scripture only dares to whisper about. Genesis chapter 6 tells us that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. From that union came beings the text calls Nephilim, and the word itself means the fallen ones. Not metaphorical giants, not folklore. Genesis calls them mighty men which were of old, men of renown. But here is what most sermons never tell you. The book of Enoch, a text so revered that the Apostle Jude quotes it directly in the New Testament, gives us the rest of the story. It names 200 watchers who descended on Mount Hermon. It names their leader Semjaza and his second Azazel, and it tells us plainly what they brought with them. Not just forbidden unions, forbidden knowledge. Enoch 8.1 records that Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them. Before that moment, humanity had no warcraft, no blades built to kill 1,000 at once. That knowledge came from somewhere else, it came down. Think about what that means. Every civilization we call ancient, Sumer, Akkad, the early kingdoms of the Nile, inherited a world already stained by weapons no human mind designed alone. The book of Jubilees adds another layer, describing how violence multiplied across the earth so quickly, so unnaturally, that God's own reaction was not correction. It was erasure. The flood was not simply judgment on human sin. It was the shutting of a door on a technology too dangerous to leave in mortal hands. And this is where the story most churches stop telling starts to matter more than ever. Because if God chose to bury that knowledge under water and stone, rather than simply take it back, where did it go? Enoch doesn't say the weapons were destroyed, it says the watchers were bound. Azazel, according to Enoch 10:4, was seized by the angel Raphael and cast into darkness, into a pit in the desert called Dudael, and covered with rocks, not annihilated, but sealed. If the teacher of forbidden craft was sealed beneath the earth, what happened to everything he taught? This is not a question modern archaeology likes to touch, and there's a reason for that. Sites like Göbekli Tepe in modern Turkey are dated to roughly 9600 BC, older than Stonehenge by 6,000 years, older than the pyramids by 7,000. Its pillars are carved with precision that shouldn't exist among people we're told were simple hunter-gatherers. No metal tools have been found there capable of producing those carvings. So what carved them? Baalbek in Lebanon holds stones weighing over 800 tons, cut and moved with a level of engineering modern cranes still struggle to replicate. Puma Punku in Bolivia shows cuts so exact that some blocks fit together like machined parts, not hand-chiseled stone. These are not campfire legends, these are structures you can walk up to and touch today. Now hold that image next to Enoch's account of the Watchers, instructing mankind in secrets of magic, and giving them the cutting of roots and trees, language that ancient readers understood as metallurgy and craft beyond natural human progress. Engineers who study Baalbek's trilithon stones still argue over how a Bronze Age population could have quarried, transported, and set them without the kind of machinery we associate with the last century. Some suggest ramps and sledges. Others admit the math doesn't fully add up. That gap between what we know and what stands in front of us is exactly the space these ancient texts try to fill. The Book of Giants, found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, goes even further, describing the Nephilim offspring as beings of such size and strength that no ordinary weapon of that era could stand against them. If mankind was to survive alongside creatures like that, mankind needed weapons that shouldn't have existed yet. And according to these texts, they got them from teachers who were never supposed to give them. There's a reason Numbers chapter 13 still unsettles people who read it carefully. The spies sent into Canaan return terrified, reporting, "There we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers." This is written centuries after the flood. Whatever bloodline the flood was meant to erase, it resurfaces. And if the bloodline survived in pockets, what about the weapons those bloodlines still remembered how to forge? Josephus, the first-century Jewish historian, wrote of Nephilim descendants persisting in the land long after Moses, of giants encountered by later generations who carried arms unlike anything wielded by ordinary soldiers. A Deuteronomy tells us of Og, king of Bashan, for only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of giants, and describes his iron bedstead as 9 cubits long, roughly 13 feet. A man that size did not carry a farmer's blade. He carried something built by knowledge older than Israel itself, knowledge some scholars believe traces directly back to what the Watchers left behind. So we return to the question this video opened with. If Azazel was bound beneath rock in a desert pit rather than destroyed, if his knowledge was passed to bloodlines that survived the flood, if giants with unnatural weapons still walked the land generations later, what happened to that knowledge when those bloodlines finally vanished from recorded history? Did it disappear with them? Or was it buried the way its source was buried, sealed beneath the earth, waiting in places we've only begun to excavate? That question is exactly what the rest of this journey is going to open up, layer by layer, text by text, site by site. If stories like this move something in you, if you feel like there are pieces of scripture the modern church left out of the conversation, this channel exists for exactly that reason. Hit subscribe now because we go deeper into these forbidden texts every single week, and you won't want to miss what comes next. And if you want to hold this history in your own hands, our premium illustrated biblical mystery guide, The Forbidden Book of Enoch, walks you through the Watchers, the giants, and the world before the flood in a way no single video ever could. Full of illustrations, source texts, and the details we simply don't have time to cover here. The link is pinned in the first comment below. It's become the resource so many of you tell me you wish existed years ago. To understand what the Watchers actually left behind, we have to go back to the exact moment they crossed the line no angel was meant to cross. Enoch doesn't describe some vague spiritual fall. It describes a plan. Chapter 6 of the book of Enoch says, "The 200 Watchers took unto themselves wives, and bound themselves by oath on Mount Hermon, swearing together so that none of them would back out." This wasn't temptation in a weak moment. It was a coordinated descent, and the mountain itself carries the mark of it. The name Hermon comes from a root meaning the place of the curse, or that which is banned. Ancient people who lived in that region knew exactly what they were naming. Once the oath was sworn, Enoch names the leadership structure of what followed, almost like a military roster. Semjaza led the group. Azazel, Armoros, Barakijal, Kokabiel, and others are each listed by name, and each is credited with teaching mankind something specific. This is the detail most people miss when they think of the fallen angels story as one generic tale of angels chasing women. It was closer to a transfer of technology. Enoch 8:3 lists it plainly. Barakijal taught astrology, Kokabiel taught the constellations, Ezekiel taught the knowledge of the clouds, and Azazel, above all of them, taught the forging of weapons and the making of ornaments, the use of antimony for beautifying the eyes, and precious stones and dyes. Notice what's paired together there. Weapons of war sit right next to cosmetics and jewelry in that same verse. That pairing isn't random. Scholars of the text point out that the writer is describing the corruption of an entire civilization at once, vanity and violence rising together, humanity becoming obsessed with appearance and armament in the same breath, as though beauty and bloodshed were handed down from the same source on the same afternoon. Once people could arm themselves better than their neighbors, and once they could adorn themselves to provoke desire and rivalry, the fabric of early human society had two new forces pulling it apart from the inside. This is precisely what Genesis chapter 6 describes happening next. The earth was filled with violence, not conflict, not disagreement, but violence as a defining feature of the age. And Genesis pairs that societal collapse with a genetic one. The offspring of the Watchers and human women are called Nephilim, and the Hebrew root of that word carries the sense of to fall or to cause to fall, beings who caused others to fall, who brought others down with them. Some rabbinic commentators through history read it as those who fell upon others. suggesting violence built directly into their nature, not just their weaponry. The book of Jasher, referenced twice in the canonical Old Testament, though not included in most modern Bibles, expands the picture even further. It describes the Nephilim generation as growing so powerful and so lawless that the sons of men taught the mixture of animals of one species with the other in order therewith to provoke the Lord. Corruption wasn't limited to weapons and warfare. It touched agriculture, breeding, the natural order of creation itself. If that account is accurate, then what the Watchers unleashed wasn't a single invention. It was systemic, an entire framework of unnatural knowledge poured into a civilization that had no spiritual immune system built to filter it. Jasher goes further still, describing entire generations raised inside this framework, never knowing a world without it. Children born into households where weapons of war were as common as farming tools, where the boundary between craftsmanship and conquest had simply disappeared. By the time Noah is introduced in the narrative, he is described as a man standing almost alone against the current of his own culture, not because he possessed some secret virtue unavailable to others, but because everyone around him had been shaped, generation after generation, by knowledge that was never meant to reach human hands in the first place. So when the flood narrative arrives in Genesis 7, it reads differently once you understand what came before it. This wasn't judgment against ordinary human failing. Genesis 6:5 says, "Every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually," a description of complete moral collapse, not just occasional sin. And when God speaks his intent to Noah, he doesn't just condemn humanity. Genesis 6:13 has God saying, "The earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth." The earth itself is implicated, as if the ground had absorbed something it needed to be cleansed of. Here's where the story gets even more specific, and where most retellings stop far too early. Enoch 10 describes God's judgment not just on humanity, but on the Watchers individually, angel by angel. Raphael is sent to bind Azazel and cast him into the desert pit of Dudael, covering him with rough, jagged rocks so that he may not see light, and so that on the day of the great judgment he shall be cast into the fire. Gabriel is sent against the giants themselves, to turn them against one another in mutual destruction. Michael is sent to bind Semjaza and his companions for 70 generations, till the day of their judgment. Every leader of the descent is handled individually, sealed rather than simply erased. That word sealed matters more than it first appears. If God intended total destruction, the text would say destruction. Instead, it describes binding, covering, imprisonment beneath the earth. Whatever these beings carried with them, whatever knowledge or craft or bloodline they represented, the judgment described in Enoch treats it as something to be contained, not something that could simply cease to exist. And containment implies a location, a place, something physical enough to require rocks piled over it, a pit dug into a specific desert, a boundary drawn around it rather than a clean erasure from history. This is the thread that carries us forward. Because if the source of the forbidden weapons was sealed rather than destroyed, and if the giants born from that corruption were turned against each other rather than instantly wiped from the earth, then remnants had time to hide what they knew, time to pass fragments to descendants who survived in pockets the flood didn't fully reach, according to the very texts that record giants reappearing generations later in Canaan. The question stops being whether this knowledge could have survived. The question becomes where it went, and what it looked like once it resurfaced in the hands of people who inherited a bloodline the world was never supposed to remember. If the flood was meant to end the story of the Nephilim, Genesis chapter 6 delivers a line that should stop every reader in their tracks. Right after describing the Watchers, their offspring, and the coming judgment, the text adds something almost in passing. And also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. Read that again. After that. After the flood, according to the plain reading of the Hebrew, the same pattern happened again. Whatever door was supposedly sealed at Mount Hermon didn't stay sealed for good. This single phrase is the reason giants keep appearing throughout the rest of the Old Testament, long after Noah's Ark comes to rest on Ararat. Numbers 13 gives us the account of the 12 spies sent into Canaan, and their report isn't vague. They describe the land through which we have gone to search it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof, and then name exactly who terrified them. There we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants. The Hebrew word used there is Nephilim, the same word from Genesis 6. The spies weren't using a figure of speech. They were identifying the bloodline by its ancient name, centuries after it was supposedly wiped from the earth. Deuteronomy gives us even more specific detail, almost like a field report. Chapter 3 describes Og, king of Bashan, as of the remnant of giants, and then does something unusual for scripture. It gives us measurements. His bedstead was a bedstead of iron. 9 cubits was the length thereof, and 4 cubits the breadth of it. 9 cubits comes to roughly 13.5 feet. That's not poetic exaggeration meant to inspire awe in a campfire story. That's a specific, almost bureaucratic detail, the kind of thing you write down when you've actually seen the object and want your audience to understand exactly what they're dealing with. And Og wasn't alone. Deuteronomy 2 references the Imim, described as a people great and many and tall as the Anakims, and notes that the Imims the Moabites call them. Different regions, different names for what appears to be the same phenomenon, tall, powerful bloodlines scattered across Canaan and the surrounding territories, remembered under different tribal labels, but clearly understood by everyone in that world as belonging to the same ancient family line. Joshua later records the conquest of cities, specifically because of their giant inhabitants, noting in chapter 11 that Joshua cut off the Anakims from the mountains of Hebron, Debir, and Anab, though some remnants survived in Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod. Gath matters here more than almost any other name in this story, because Gath is where the most famous giant of all comes from. 1 Samuel 17 introduces Goliath as a champion out of the camp of the Philistines, standing 6 cubits and a span, close to 9.5 feet by most calculations, though some ancient manuscripts record a shorter but still massive height. What the text emphasizes isn't just his size, it's his armament. He had a helmet of brass upon his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and he had greaves of brass upon his legs, and a target of brass between his shoulders, and the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam. This is not a farmer's tool repurposed for battle. This is engineered warcraft, generations removed from anything an ordinary Israelite soldier would have carried, and it comes from a city the text explicitly ties to the Anakim bloodline that survived Joshua's conquest. Even the way the text lingers on each individual piece of Goliath's equipment feels deliberate, almost like the author wanted later readers to understand this wasn't standard battlefield gear scavenged from a fallen enemy. It was a complete system of armor and weaponry, matched piece for piece, the kind of craftsmanship that requires generations of accumulated skill rather than a single blacksmith's lucky afternoon. Josephus, writing centuries later as a Jewish historian with access to sources and traditions that predate much of what survives today, confirms this pattern rather than inventing it. He records that remnants of the giant race persisted well into the era of the Judges and the early kingdom, describing bones of unusual size still being found and displayed in his own time. Whether or not every detail Josephus records can be verified, the fact that a first-century historian felt no need to explain or justify the existence of these bloodlines tells us something important. This wasn't considered myth by the people closest to the events. It was treated as documented history, uncomfortable as it may have been. He wrote at a time when the ruins of these cities were still visible, when local memory hadn't yet faded into pure legend, and he recorded what people around him still believed to be plain fact rather than folklore passed down for entertainment. Here's the piece that connects all of this back to the weapons question. If the Nephilim bloodline survived the flood in pockets, through Ham's lineage settling in Canaan, through whatever mechanism Genesis 6:4 is describing with that phrase, and also after that, then the knowledge Azazel taught before the flood didn't need to be reinvented. It could have been remembered, passed down, refined generation after generation in exactly the populations Scripture identifies as descending from that corrupted bloodline. Goliath's armor, described in such unusual technical detail by an ancient text that rarely bothers with military specifications, may not be an isolated anomaly. It may be the visible tip of a much older inheritance. And this raises a question that most Bible studies never touch, because it moves past theology into something closer to forensic history. If that inheritance of forbidden craft persisted through bloodlines that Scripture explicitly says God commanded Israel to drive out and destroy, not simply defeat but utterly remove from the land, what happened to what they built along the way? Cities don't disappear without leaving foundations. Forges don't vanish without leaving slag and tools behind. Somewhere beneath the layers of soil that now cover ancient Canaan, and beneath sites far older than Canaan itself, there should be physical evidence of exactly the kind of advanced, unnatural craftsmanship these texts insist existed. That's exactly where the story has to go next, out of the pages of Scripture and into the ground itself, to places where archaeologists have already found things they still can't fully explain. Southeastern Turkey holds a hill that shouldn't exist the way it does. Göbekli Tepe was buried on purpose, deliberately backfilled by the people who built it, and that single fact is part of what makes it so unsettling. Radiocarbon dating places its oldest layers around 9600 BC, which means this site predates the invention of pottery, predates agriculture as we understand it, and predates Stonehenge by roughly 6,000 years. Yet its T-shaped limestone pillars, some standing over 5 meters tall and weighing upwards of 10 tons, are carved with detailed reliefs of foxes, snakes, boars, and birds. Artistry that assumes a settled, organized workforce with specialized skill, built by people we were told didn't have villages yet, let alone monuments. Here's what should stop you. The people who raised these pillars had no metal tools capable of that kind of precision carving, at least none that archaeology has recovered. Stone tools alone don't fully explain the uniformity of the cuts. And then, generations later, the very people who built it chose to bury it completely, filling the enclosures with rubble and soil as if sealing something away rather than simply abandoning it. Compare that instinct to Enoch chapter 10, where Azazel is not destroyed but covered. Cover him with darkness, cast him into the darkness, and cover the earth which the angels have corrupted. Burial, not destruction. Concealment, not erasure. Whether or not Göbekli Tepe has any direct connection to the Watcher narrative, the pattern of sealing something too significant to leave exposed shows up again and again in this era, in ways that feel like more than coincidence. Now travel south and east, into modern Lebanon to Baalbek. Beneath a Roman temple complex sits a foundation platform that predates Rome entirely, built from megaliths so massive that modern engineers still debate the exact method used to move them. The largest, known as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, weighs an estimated 1,000 tons. Nearby, in the same quarry, lies an even larger unfinished block, estimated near 1,750 tons. To put that in perspective, the largest modern cranes struggle to lift even a fraction of that weight. And Baalbek's builders weren't just lifting these stones, they were transporting them, fitting them with joints so tight that even today you cannot slide a blade of paper between them. Local tradition in the region, recorded long before modern archaeology arrived, attributed the original construction to giants, a memory passed down through generations who lived closest to the stones themselves and had no reason to invent such a specific, consistent claim. Cross the Atlantic, and the pattern repeats in a completely different culture, with no plausible contact to the Near East. Puma Punku in the Bolivian highlands near Lake Titicaca features stone blocks cut with such mathematical precision that some archaeologists have compared the tolerances to modern machine work. Andesite and diorite, both extremely hard stone, show cuts and drill holes with an evenness that hand tools of the presumed era should not have been able to achieve. Interlocking joints, standardized measurements across separate blocks, meant to fit together like a kit. This is not the signature of trial and error stonework. It's the signature of a system, a method passed down and repeated with discipline, exactly the kind of transferred technical knowledge Enoch describes the Watchers handing to early humanity. Not far away, high in the Peruvian Andes, Sacsayhuamán presents the same riddle in an even larger scale. Its walls are built from limestone blocks weighing up to 200 tons each, fitted together without mortar so precisely that, Again, no blade can slip between them, even after centuries of earthquakes that have leveled colonial Spanish buildings nearby, while these ancient walls remained standing. Engineers today still debate whether the Inca themselves built these lowest foundation layers, or simply inherited and built upon something already ancient when they arrived. Local oral tradition among descendants of the region speaks of a race of giants who lived before their own ancestors, responsible for the oldest and heaviest work. Tiwanaku, close to Punku, adds another layer with its gateway of the sun, carved from a single block of andesite and covered in calendar-like iconography that some researchers believe encodes astronomical knowledge far more advanced than the culture is typically credited with possessing at that presumed date. The precision of the carved figures around its border, repeated with almost mechanical consistency, raises the same uncomfortable question every one of these sites raises: not whether ancient people were capable of intelligence, but whether some of them had access to a body of knowledge that simply should not have been available yet, knowledge that seems to arrive fully formed rather than gradually developed the way human technology normally progresses. And far across the Pacific, off the coast of Japan, the underwater formations at Yonaguni present stepped, angular structures resting 50 feet below the surface, natural formation according to some geologists, deliberately carved monument according to others, but either way dated to a period when sea levels suggest the site would have been above water, meaning any human construction there predates the flooding of the region entirely, placing it in exactly the kind of pre-flood timeframe these ancient texts keep pointing toward. What ties all of these sites together isn't a shared architectural style, it's the presence of a technical capability that shouldn't exist at the dates assigned to them, scattered across cultures with no apparent contact with each other. Enoch's account doesn't claim the Watchers taught only one tribe in one location. It describes a general corruption of all the sons of men, a global contamination of knowledge rather than a localized event confined to the Near East. If that account holds any historical weight, we should expect to find exactly what we're finding: fragments of impossible craftsmanship scattered across continents, disconnected in geography, but unified by a level of skill that keeps outpacing what conventional timelines say should have been possible. And if that forbidden knowledge touched architecture and stonework this advanced, the question this entire investigation keeps circling back to becomes impossible to ignore. If they could move 1,000-ton stones with unexplainable precision, what could they forge? What could they build for war when the same corrupted knowledge that raised these monuments was, according to Enoch, first and foremost, the knowledge of weapons, swords, breastplates, shields, and blades handed down by Azazel before any of these stones were ever cut? Monuments leave ruins that tourists can walk through today. Weapons, by contrast, are made to be used, hidden, buried, or lost, and that difference alone may explain why we found so many impossible stones and so few impossible blades. Every one of the sites we've walked through carries a detail that rarely makes it into the documentaries. Beneath the visible ruins, there is almost always another layer: tunnels, chambers, or foundations that go deeper than what tourists are shown. And that pattern connects directly back to the exact language Enoch uses for how the Watchers themselves were dealt with. Not thrown into the sky, not vaporized, bound and covered underground. Look again at Enoch 10:4-5, where Raphael is commanded regarding Azazel: "Bind him fast and place him in the darkness, and make an opening in the desert, which is in Dudael, and cast him there." An opening in the desert. A specific location, named, remembered, passed down precisely enough that the text treats it as a real place, rather than a symbolic one. Ancient Jewish tradition later associated Dudael with a rugged, cliff-bound region east of Jerusalem, and some scholars connect the name itself to a root meaning cauldron of God, a place of confinement carved into the earth itself. If the leader of the Watchers was sealed in a literal, locatable pit, it raises an uncomfortable question about everything he taught. Was the knowledge sealed with him, in the same ground in chambers his followers or descendants might have known how to find again? Baalbek gives us the clearest physical echo of this idea. Beneath the platform holding those 1,000-ton megaliths, explorers have documented an extensive network of tunnels and chambers, some cut directly into bedrock, others built with the same precision stonework as the visible structures above. Local legend in the region has, for centuries, described these underground spaces as older than the Roman temple built on top of them, older even than the Phoenician structures that came before Rome. Some of these chambers remain unexcavated to this day, sealed off, their full extent unknown. A platform built to bear stones heavier than anything else on Earth, sitting atop a hidden network no one has fully mapped. If you were going to hide something you didn't want found, this is exactly the kind of place you would choose. Sacsayhuamán offers something similar. Beneath its massive zigzagging walls, local tradition and several early Spanish chroniclers recorded stories of tunnels extending for miles underground, connecting the site to other locations across the region, including, according to some accounts, all the way to Coricancha in Cusco. Spanish colonial authorities reportedly sealed several entrances after early explorers who entered them either failed to return or emerged describing passages far more extensive than anyone expected. Whether every detail of these accounts holds up to modern scrutiny, the consistency of the claim across an entirely separate culture, continents away from Baalbek with no shared source, is difficult to dismiss as pure coincidence. Modern engineers who have surveyed portions of the accessible passages describe stonework, matching the same impossible precision found on the surface walls above, cut and fitted by hands or tools that leave no clear trace of how the work was accomplished, buried in darkness where almost no visitors have ever been permitted to look. Scripture itself treats the underground world as a place where forbidden or dangerous things are kept, not simply where the dead are buried. Isaiah 24:21-22 describes a coming judgment where the Lord shall punish the host of the high ones that are on high, and the kings of the earth upon the earth. And they shall be gathered together, as prisoners are gathered in the pit, and shall be shut up in the prison, and after many days shall they be visited. That word pit appears again and again across the prophetic books in connection with fallen spiritual beings, not human graves, a specific recurring image of confinement beneath the surface of the world, reserved for something dangerous enough that it needed to be shut away rather than simply killed. Ezekiel uses similar imagery when describing the fall of proud, powerful nations sent down to the pit, alongside those who went before them, language that ancient readers would have connected to this same underground realm of the bound and the waiting. Job, one of the oldest books in Scripture, adds a strange and often overlooked detail in chapter 26, describing how dead things are formed from under the waters and the inhabitants thereof, and how Sheol is naked before him and destruction hath no covering. The picture across these texts isn't of an empty underworld. It's of a crowded one, populated by remnants, by things bound rather than destroyed, existing in a state the ancient writers clearly understood as ongoing rather than finished. If Azazel could be described this way, sealed but not gone, imprisoned but still present, why would the knowledge and craftsmanship he introduced be treated any differently? Bring this back to Göbekli Tepe, deliberately backfilled by its own builders rather than left standing. Bring it back to Puma Punku, where entire sections remain unexcavated beneath what's currently visible. Bring it back to accounts from Peru of tunnel systems still unmapped, and to Baalbek's chambers still closed off after all these centuries. Every single one of these sites shows the same pattern Enoch describes for the watchers themselves: covered, not cleared; buried, not obliterated. If that pattern holds for angels, it likely holds for what those angels built, and what their descendants continued building in the centuries the Bible spends describing giants who never fully disappeared. This is why the question in the title of this video isn't rhetorical. The forbidden weapons of the fallen angels may not be a metaphor for lost wisdom or a poetic way of describing ancient sin. According to the very texts that first recorded this history, the source of that knowledge was physically sealed in a specific location, guarded rather than destroyed, awaiting what Enoch calls the day of the great judgment. And scattered across the earth in places human engineers still can't fully explain, we keep finding structures that suggest exactly the kind of impossible craftsmanship that knowledge would have produced, structures that, in more than one case, sit directly above chambers we have never finished exploring. Whatever is down there, Scripture never tells us it was removed. It tells us it was hidden. And hidden things, unlike destroyed ones, can still be found. That distinction is the thread holding this entire investigation together. And it's exactly why the final part of this story matters more than anything that's come before it. Because if these forbidden things were only sealed away, then the age we're living in now, with the tools and technology to finally reach places human beings could never dig before, may be the very age these ancient texts were quietly written for. What's buried beneath our feet may not be legend at all, it may simply be waiting. Thank you for walking through this with me today. If this story pulled at something in you, hit subscribe now, because we uncover another piece of this forbidden history every single week, and you won't want to miss where we go next. Like this video, drop a comment telling me which detail struck you the most, and stay close, because another video is already waiting on your screen. And if you want the full picture, our premium illustrated biblical mystery guide, The Forbidden Book of Enoch, unpacks the Watchers, the Giants, and the world before the flood in far more depth than any single video allows. The link is pinned in the first comment below.